everybody. Very happy to be speaking to you today. We'll be talking about the strategic plan as mentioned. And I think regardless of whether you're a group water scheme or any other organisation that's in the rural water sector at the minute, with everything that's happened over the last few years in terms of the view of the rural water sector, new drinking water regulations, and all the other things that are happening, strategic planning is probably the most difficult thing to do at the moment, which is all the more reason to know that it's the most important thing to be doing. So today I'm going to take you through the process that we're engaging at the minute with both the board and federation staff on how we're preparing our strategic plan up until 2030. So it'll be a 6-year plan. It's not finalised yet. We're still working everything. Everything's very much a work in progress, but it's just to give you a little bit of an insight into our thought process and how we're going about it. So it's something we've been working on for a few years now, actually about 2022. The board commissioned an external consultant to conduct a review of the organisation and our activities to see where improvements could be made ahead of our next strategic plan. Obviously, the current one runs until the end of 2024. So then last year, in July of last year, the board established a strategic plan working group, which is made up of a mixture of NFGWS board members and NFGWS staff. So we've been meeting ever since, having discussions and trying to decide what are our strategic objectives for the next 6 years. And then off the back of that, I suppose when we started talking, when we started looking at what we wanted to achieve, we really had to conduct a review of our own resources to make sure we had the resources to do what we wanted to do. So we've submitted a business case to the department seeking increased supports, and then also looked within the federation in terms of our own affiliation fees and how we can make sure that we have the resources that are necessary. And then the other thing, and it's a big thing I suppose that came out of both the external review and also from our own discussions in the working group, is how are we going to measure success? A lot of what we talk about, and you'll see here when I go on further on in the presentation, these are objectives for the wider sector as a whole, but obviously we only play one role in that. So it's how can we do that? So I'll take you through that as we go through the slides in terms of what we're coming up with. So there are a lot of factors to consider. I came up with these, I think, when I sat down in around the space for about 30 seconds. I'm not going to go through them all. Many of them you'll hear about today later on. Many of them you're all more than familiar with. There was one I wanted to dwell on a little bit, and Fintan has stolen my thunder on this one, but has explained it much better than I ever could, which is the Water Services policy statement. So that is the one we would closely align ourselves to, obviously. That's why our strategic plan runs until 2030. It's in conjunction with that, and we will be following the same 3 priorities that Fintan talked about, which is availability and reliability, safety and quality, and sustainability. Now, these things mean different things for whether you're a public supply or whether you're a group water scheme. We'll all take different interpretations away from it, and also obviously they blend together. There's lots of things here that I'll be discussing that they don't just fit into one siloed category, but hopefully as we discuss, everything will come together nicely. So I'm going to take you through what we are working on at the moment, which is our objectives under each of these priorities. So there are 5 key objectives we have at the moment for availability and reliability. So these are to assist group water schemes in maintaining reliable, sustainable sources compliant with abstractions legislation. It's not just about the abstractions legislation and safe yield assessments, everything that comes with it. It's also about supporting schemes when they're in times of drought and water availability, ensuring that we have a sustainable source into the future. Promote a drinking water service that meets the demands and expectations of group water scheme members. This obviously is extremely important, and there are new ramifications to the new drinking water regulations in terms of keep members informed about drinking water quality and everything. So we are going to be aiming to improve that and help schemes to improve that service to members as well. The next one is ensure group water schemes are prepared and are adapting to meet the challenges of climate change, which obviously closely aligns to the first objective we mentioned there. These are in no particular order either in terms of importance, but that will also be the findings of our BECA project, our biodiversity enhancement and climate action project that we're running at the moment, will be very important to that. And we look at things like energy consumption and renewable energy sources and all there is in terms of achieving energy efficiency. Assist in the delivery of adequate capital and operational supports for the group water scheme sector. So we've mentioned the multi-annual rural water programme is one, obviously, and then also the operational subsidy. The programme, I think there's been some great improvements to the process There will be an interim review in, I think, the mid-programme, and we'll be working with the department and group water schemes and local authorities as well to see what other improvements can be made. The last one then is help group water schemes to provide public access to drinking water, which is one of the stipulations of the new drinking water regulations, and we've had a very successful drinking water refill stations instalment project that's been running over the last few years. I think we've over almost 40 schemes now with drinking water refill stations installed on the networks, and I'll be talking about that a little bit more later on as well. So moving on to the next priority, safety and quality, which I think is exactly what it says on the tin. But in terms of our objectives over the next 6 years, the first one here we have is to work with all stakeholders to address remaining and emergency quality deficient group water schemes. We need to we're hovering around that 95–96% mark in terms of the EPA reports of private supplies. So it's about bridging that gap, as Mike mentioned, to get to 100% compliance. And then also, of course, the emerging chemical parameters, THMs, manganese have already been mentioned, and we have some new parameters in the new regulations as well. Support effective water safety planning from catchment to consumer is going to be a massive job of work for the group water scheme sector over the next 6 years, in ensuring that every group water scheme has a water safety plan. By 2029, we've been developing a water safety planning too, so we're planning to roll that out across the sector over the coming years. Then the next one is lead the sector in placing an enhanced focus on drinking water source protection. I'm not going to dwell on that one because we'll be talking about that, Roshi will be talking about that later on in terms of the integrated source protection planning, and we're all well familiar at this point with the importance of it. The next one we have is provide and improve training and mentoring support for group water schemes in all aspects of water quality. So we will have to review our quality assurance implementation training that we already have to bring it in line with the water safety planning and risk assessment, risk management ethos of the new drinking water regulations. We're in a good place. I think already the group water scheme sector almost had preempted this in terms of the quality assurance system that we had developed. So it's about refreshing that and also introducing new ways. So at the moment, we're developing an online training platform, and we're working with ICAS to do that. So first off, we're going to look at governance, but then the next on our agenda is quality assurance and an online on-demand system for group water scheme, both operatives, but be they committee members or staff, to give them more training in regards to quality assurance. And then we have other training, of course, that we're going to look at too. Next one is deliver effective representation regarding water policies. So this is in terms of the Federation and sitting in the Rural Water Working Group, and other groups going to be very important, as already has been discussed, in terms of the DBO turnarounds and everything else. And last as well, of course, very important one is to promote health and safety on group water schemes. And Karen's getting to mention again, she's mentioned ago, she's also a health and safety officer, so we'll be leading out on that over the coming years. Then moving on to objectives. Sustainability objectives for it. The first one up here we have is to help ensure that group water schemes are financially secure and have a robust operational structures. This is exactly what Mike was talking about as well, and ensuring that schemes are of a sufficient size. It's not just about getting funding support, it's about making sure that your scheme is large enough to be financially viable, that you've got staff in place, that you've got an adequate charging structure in place, that it's not just obviously finance as well, it's also in terms of providing a service to the wider community. You've got sustainable sources as well, so that's a massive job of work there. Next we have is place a renewed emphasis on water demand management. Group water schemes are in a good place in terms of universal metering and being able to keep tabs on water demand. And I think the next stage in this is, as we're seeing from the last few years, is that it's not just about getting to the consumer meter, it's having to go beyond the consumer meter because of the impacts that it's having on water availability. And I think if you look at the Group Water Scheme Excellence Award winners, the thing that comes up time and time again in regards to water demand management is that these group water schemes are going out and they're conducting meter readings multiple times a year. They're engaging with their members, trying to keep as much water loss in across their entire network as possible. And I think it's a great way to do it. It's a very important thing in terms of making sure you have a sustainable source, and also in terms of the water quality issues that can come with an increase in demand. Next, we have to highlight best practices across the sector. The Group Water Scheme Excellence Awards are a perfect example of this, and the reason of this is not just about giving ourselves, or the Group Water Schemes giving themselves a pat on the back. It's about trying to learn from each other, show group water schemes what can we achieve, show the wider rural community what can be achieved. So it's a very important thing. It helps to strengthen community participation in drinking water delivery. I'm going to come back to that one in a second. And then the last two are guide a sector that continues to innovate and is a leader in delivering quality water services. This I feel is a very important one, because I think nowadays, but especially with all the new regulations that have come in and the different crises that we're trying to address, you can start on a Monday morning and you can have a list of tasks. I think everybody's probably the same, that they're trying to get through during the week, and your task might get added to it. All of a sudden, come the end of the week, you have a longer list of tasks. But we cannot let ourselves become a task-orientated sector purely. Like, if you look at the 25-year documentary that we've released, is up on YouTube, and it'll be, I think it's out, it'll be on one of the TVs during the break. It's a really interesting documentary. I'd urge everybody to watch it. But you can see the sector itself, it was founded on ideas. DBO, the National Federation, Quality Assurance Programme, our source protection implementation and our pilot projects. These are all around conversations. They weren't just tasks. So we really need to keep those conversations going, because there are going to be a lot of challenges over the years ahead. And I think it needs to be something that's in our strategic plan to make sure that we sometimes take a sit back and assess how can we do things better. And then lastly there on sustainability, we have ensured that the National Federation is effective, efficient and is adequately resourced to achieve its strategic priorities. So this is looking inward and making sure that all our staff are motivated, upskilled and are able to provide as much help as possible. So earlier on I mentioned how can we measure results and how can we measure our role within these objectives, because they're quite broad for the whole sector obviously. So I'm going to just focus on help to strengthen community participation in drinking water delivery and give you an example here. So what we've actually decided to do is we'll have two different types. We'll have a strategic plan and then our own internal National Federation work plan for staff. So in terms of the strategic plan, what you have here is the objective and then a desired outcome. So the desired outcome in this case would be diverse and energetic group water scheme boards working with engaged, educated and supportive group water scheme members, and that group water schemes are exemplars of good governance, effective community ownership and the cooperative ethos. Again, not just down to us, it's down to all the group water schemes, and it's down to the continued support that we'll get from the local authorities, from the department and all the other organisations that are here today. So drilling down a little bit further, we ask ourselves, what can we do? So for every objective, we will have in our work plan key results that we want to achieve. So in this case, one of the examples I'm giving that falls under this objective is promote improved gender and age balance in group water scheme boards. And then within that, the tasks that we are committing to do to help achieve that result. So two example tasks here would be work with group water schemes to develop recruitment strategies and continue the schools education and other community initiatives that we have already run and many of the group water schemes have been involved in that are here today. I'm focusing obviously on this objective because it's an extremely important one. If you do not have community participation, both in terms of your board participation on boards and participation in the wider community, whether it be source protection, water conservation, it's impossible to achieve any of the other objectives that we've set out here today. So they're just a couple of examples. As I mentioned, there will be more key results under that one objective and then key results under every other objective. So at the minute, as we mentioned, we're not finalised yet. These are still very much a work in process or in progress. The next steps will be to finalise the objectives and the desired outcomes. We'll then be translating that into that action-driven internal Federation work plan and then publishing our final strategic planning document towards the end of the year. So the next thing I suppose I have is the question for everybody here, especially the group water schemes, is what is your plan? Because one thing we need to always remember as well is that the National Federation of Group Water Schemes and group water schemes that are out there are not two separate things, but one and the same. We represent you through the board that's elected, who then employ obviously staff to help the board achieve what it wants or what its aims are. So I think it's important that every group water scheme is also thinking strategically. Look, not just 5 years, 6 years, look 10, 15 years into the future. Today's a great opportunity to do that. I think everybody's got a pen and paper in front of them as the day is going on. I'd encourage you to write down these three headings: people, infrastructure and product, because they are the three main things that you need to ask yourself. If you look forward 5 years into the future, 10 years, 15 years, who are the people that are going to be involved in your group water scheme? what do you want your group water scheme to look like first and foremost, and who are the people you need to be involved in order to achieve those aims. What infrastructure do you need? Do you need infrastructure improvements in terms of drinking, or in terms of your treatment plant? Do you need infrastructure improvements in terms of your network? And then product. What water quality issues might you face over the next 5, 10, 15 years? What issues might you face in terms of water availability and water quantity and impacts of climate change? And then these will spawn more and more questions, whether it be, do we need to rationalise and amalgamate? Do we need to hire more staff? All these questions that will then feed back into a strategic plan for your own group water scheme. Every group water scheme that participated ran a governance training and workshop before Christmas last year. Any group water scheme that was there was also provided with a sample strategic plan. So I think between the sample plan and the questions you asked today, these are a great basis to go on to start your own strategic plan for the next foreseeable future. And lastly, before I go, I want to give one example of what I feel is our strategic plan in action. So this is Dewis Group Water Scheme, and this, I think, is a good story of what many of the things and the objectives we talked about there over the last 20 minutes or so, what happens when they all come together. So Dewis Group Water Scheme is one of the group water schemes that participated in our drinking water refill station project. We got funding through the Department of the Environment to install drinking water refill stations on, I think it was 16 group water scheme network last year. And as part of that, the group water schemes that participated agreed to also fund reusable water bottles for school children and visit schools with themselves. So the Jewish Group Water Scheme visited 2 primary schools on its network last year, and I'm going to talk about Farrelly National School in particular for this example. So the scheme, along with ourselves, went out, we delivered our All About Water curriculum. All the school pupils were given that reusable drinking water bottle and also a tree to plant at home as part of, I planted a tree and my garden is pesticide free, and obviously educated on the importance of protecting water sources. They were brought to the treatment plant, given a tour of the plant and how it operates, to the reservoir, to the lake source as well. They were shown chlorine sampling, how it's done, and opening and closing the valves and everything there is to do with running a group water scheme. This was just part of a wider project that the school participated in, and that it ran itself, trying to educate themselves around everything to do with water and water quality. And they also do things like rainwater harvesting and other aspects like that. And it all culminated in the school winning the Green Schools Award for the National Primary School of the Year for water. And obviously the visit and the participation with from Jewish Group Water Scheme had a big factor in that. And you can see Jerry at the corner there got a paper crown out of it as well. That's the Group Water Scheme manager. And you can see this is why I wanted to highlight this one, because it's a great example of all the things you talked about coming together. The scheme took funding for the station but ran with it and have engaged with the schools. These could be, you see the school kids there in the bottom right hand corner, these could be your new Group Water Scheme committee members in years to come. At the very least, they're more aware now of where the drinking water comes from and the need to protect the source, and they're going to educate their own parents around that. The scheme itself is now going on, they're funding their own integrated source protection plan. They're rolling ahead on the good, building on the good work that's been done over the last couple of years. So I think it shows you that from one little thing, you can get a lot of big, great achievements in loads of different areas. So I think that is something that, I think there's lots of examples, this is just one, and I promise you it's just a coincidence that it happened to be a Cavan Group Water Scheme this year, and it'll be just a coincidence when it's a Cavan Group Water Scheme again next year. But that is it for me. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening.